Australia's roadmap to ending lockdowns and reopening remains a moving feast. With absolutely no clarity or end in sight, the country is stuck in limbo. Australians have been told once the 70% vaccination threshold was reached, our freedom will begin to return, and at 80%, we're basically free. And yet, our freedom was never the government's to take and then give back again to begin with. Well, it seems the promise will more than likely be a hollow one, amounting to nothing, because Australia's state and federal governments are reliant on old news. And what's even more apparent, they're failing to keep up with the rapid pace of change. Israel seems to be the canary in the mine, and what the Israelis are communicating is disturbing. Earlier this week, Yahoo News and Reuters were reporting Israel is beginning to offer boosters to every single vaccinated person over the age of 30, and only 5 months after their second jab. 5 months short. Last week, an Oxford University study published found the efficacy of Pfizer vaccine against symptomatic infection practically halved after just 4 months, and vaccinated people with the more infectious Delta variant had just as high a viral load as the unvaccinated. Now, Australia's state and federal governments have an opportunity right now to pivot and change course, because the light at the end of the tunnel they promised us could well be an oncoming train. The vaccines have been overhyped based on rush testing, and Scott Morrison has committed Australia to the Pfizer vaccine, which, according to data from Israel, Britain, Qatar, the Seychelles and the United States, is actually the worst performer. He and his advisors have an opportunity to change course right now, rather than remain wedded to outdated theories, because the facts have actually changed. It is irresponsible and demonstrates incompetence to lead Australia through the rearview mirror. Now, if Morrison thinks Australia can inoculate every man, woman and child twice a year, annually, with booster shots, how is he going to plan on delivering 50 million injections a year? That's year after year commitment, without sending our already struggling health system into meltdown. Australia began vaccinating its most vulnerable and elderly in March, with boosters required after 5 months. Based on that modelling, Australia will need to continue to give the elderly and vulnerable booster shots on a regular 5-monthly basis. If the science, the actual science, is to be followed and the vulnerable are to be protected, how does that strategy fit in with the current vaccination plan? In short, it just doesn't. In the context of vaccine passports, what does vaccination even mean? And is it really a pass to our freedoms? If we go on the premise of what is proposed, everyone will have to line up for a 5-monthly booster shot. Is that any way to live? Australia's leaders should be working on a Plan B right now. What does Plan B even look like? Does it mean the government focusing all their energy on protecting the vulnerable and inoculating and boosting them with the precision to minimise their risk? And backing away from a vaccinate the nation policy that fails to acknowledge that the current COVID vaccines do not stop transmission, and they're becoming less effective at preventing severe illness and death. This is not the informer's opinion, but is reported fact by the Israelis, the Americans and the British. Scott Morrison has sold Australia to Pfizer to the tune of billions of dollars for an overhyped, poorly performing vaccine that won't deliver on what Australians have been promised to protect them against the Delta variant. What will Mr Morrison and his advisors do to avert the oncoming train that threatens to derail our path back to freedom?